was a constant mystery to her friend. Bettina stirred her coffee and added a bit more cream, then helped herself to another square of crumb cake from the platter before her. But before she could take up her fork again, the doorbell chimed. Wolfus raised his shaggy head and cast a troubled glance in Bettina's direction. "It's okay, boy," she cooed in a soothing voice as she rose and headed for the doorway that led to the dining room and the living room beyond. The next moment her powers to soothe were put to a more demanding test. Pamela heard the front door open, and from the living room came Bettina's voice, tinged with alarm, saying, "Oh, you poor dear! Whatever is the matter?" The response was an indistinct, high-pitched muddle, followed by a pause. The words that followed the pause were, however, enunciated clearly. "And she was dead?" Pamela had been holding her coffee mug, just about to take a sip when the doorbell chimed. Now she noticed that the jolt she'd received when she'd heard those words had roiled the coffee's dark surface into a tiny tsunami. She set the mug down, lowered both hands to the table surface, and took a deep breath. Bettina's voice took over then, murmuring disjointed phrases having to do with sitting down and drinking coffee and explaining again what on earth had happened. In a moment, Bettina reappeared, leading the woman Pamela recognized as Marlene Pepper. Marlene was a fixture of the Arborville community, the same age and shape as Bettina, a genial woman whom Pamela chatted with when her trips to the co-op for groceries overlapped with Marlene's. At the moment, though, Marlene barely resembled herself. Instead of the tidy pants outfits or suit skirts she was normally seen in, she was wearing a pair of dirt-stained and baggy jeans topped with a dirt-stained flannel shirt untucked. The smooth gray blonde hair that normally curved around her plump cheeks was in disarray, and instead of the placid cheer that suited her round face, her expression combined shock and grief. Her eyes had the red and watery look of someone who had recently cried and was likely to cry again. Wolfus stared at the newcomer for a second, seemed to decide she wasn't a threat, and resumed his nap. Bettina settled Marlene into a chair, paused to give her shoulders a gentle rub, then hurried toward the stove to fetch a mug of coffee. "It's nice and hot, and here's cream and sugar," she said as she set the mug in front of Marlene. She gestured at the cream pitcher and sugar bowl and hurried off again to fetch a spoon. "And there's crumb cake from the co-op," she added when she returned. Marlene shook her head and left the coffee untouched. "I just keep seeing her," she whispered, "stretched out on the ground right across a row of tomato seedlings. And at first I just thought she'd fallen, so I bent down to ask if she was okay and to help her up, but she was—" Marlene shuddered. "Her eyes were wide open, just staring, and there was—" She shaped a lopsided circle with her hands. "One of those knitting things that's like a loop of wire with two ends that look like knitting needles." Her voice modulated into a wail. "It was around her neck." Marlene buried her face in her hands. Bettina rose from her chair and resumed rubbing Marlene's shoulders, making comforting sounds. "It's just a blessing I found her before her mother did," Marlene went on when she'd recovered a bit, though her cheeks were now slick with tears. "Jenny and Janice share the garden plot, and they were both such early birds, up there digging away first thing in the morning." Bettina darted away again and returned with a fresh kitchen towel that she dampened at the sink. The damp towel and Bettina's ministrations restored Marlene to something like her normal self, though with quavering voice and weepy eyes. She explained that, of course, she'd called 911 immediately. Thank goodness she had her phone with her, and the police had come, and she'd been at the community gardens for the past 2 hours telling the same story to more.